More deals going on in the NFL, and DJ Chark is now with the Carolina Panthers, making things very interesting. We've heard talks, we've heard rumors over the last few days, week or so on Twitter about this. Deal's finally done. Now it's him, Adam Thielen, Terrace, Marshal, and Laviska Shenault. I've been very quiet about the Panthers and the Chicago Bears ever since that deal because I really want to see some of this dust settle. Looks like it's settling. I figured something was going to happen here. Now it's good to talk about this offense from a Dynasty fantasy football perspective. And honestly, this is kind of murky for fantasy football situation, but when you're looking at this team, they just got the 101. They're drafting their quarterback. That's what they're doing. They're getting their quarterback for the future, and they're trying to build this offense so they can have a good transition. Plus, they got Andy Dalton there. They want to do well. They want to compete. They got Miles Sanders. They are trying to do some things. DJ Chark's a field stretcher, listed at 4.3 speed, but, injuries and older, but he's still fast. He can get downfield, get air yards. You saw that when he was healthy last year with Detroit. Adam Thielen, older wide receiver, very nuanced, good ball skills for what he can do. Laviska Shenault still has to prove himself, had a lot of injuries to his name, but there is a little bit of something in the tank. Might not be much, might be some drips. Terrace Marshall's still a young wide receiver. A lot of people was chasing him in DFS last season due to the air yards. He had a bump in target share for a little bit. And honestly, this is a very ambiguous offense. And I've had questions about Laviska Shenault and Terrace Marshall on other platforms and even in the comment section. And the thing about this now is the price is going to drop. And Laviska Shenault's price can't drop it much lower anyways. Thing about him, if you wanted him, you go get him. Hard to roster on basic leagues. Pretty much it's got to be a deeper league. I'm in some 16-teamers with flexes and stuff. So he is rostered in those leagues. But some of those basic dynasty leagues, 2 RBs, just a couple wide receivers, maybe a flex or so, it's going to be hard to roster him. Terrace Marshall is probably going to dip a bit, and that's probably going to put him in free territory. Still a young wide receiver with a lot to prove, and attrition might hit this offense. You got an older wide receiver. DJ Chark's been injured. Last year he was injured, so attrition might hit this offense. Laviska Shenault hasn't been a clean bill of health. Attrition might hit this offense next year. That's a good possibility. Terrace Marshall's still young. And when he was getting targets, they were deep targets. And that's not a call saying this dude's going to be the next wide receiver 2, the next wide receiver 1. Just from a fantasy football perspective, in-game, week to week, just looking at the macro, at the workload here, that's how he can show you some production. And that's something that could be on the back end of your roster there. The deep ball guy, the guy who just sees a rise in target share once the dust settles and you're like week 6 through 11 and you get that pop off. And he's still a young guy and he could get moved. He's a younger dude, but it looks like this team is setting themselves up, having some guys there to compete at the wide receiver spots, having some talents, even though it's not top tier as in the top guys. They're trying to put it together. They're trying to bridge the transition here for their new quarterback, for Andy Dalton. Got Miles Sanders there. We got some things on the up and up. The thing about this is you got those 2 prospects there that everybody loved a few years ago. Now they're dirt cheap. They're speculation pieces. So when you speculate, you pick them up on the cheap, and you just hope they go off, and that they're like a Shiba coin or something like that. They're your shit coin that you pick up on your team, you add them, and you hope they go off. You only got so many roster spots, so you got to pick your shit coins wisely. But Terrace Marshall's a young wide receiver. We saw they can get air yards. That might transfer over to this year with the new coaching staff. That's something you want to look at. Laviska Shenault's so free that it doesn't even matter. Even if he's on a roster, he's just a throw-in. Something like that. And Terrace Marshall's starting to get in the throw-in category when it comes to trades. You're not buying him. I do not buy him. I get him. That's the thing. I do not buy him. I just get him. That's the thing with these wide receivers, because people are going to be alarmed with Chark. People are going to be reactionary with Thielen. I do not buy them. I get them. That's the difference. They are not buys. They are gets. You pick them up. You get them. You get them as a throw-in. You get them with a dirt cheap pick. You get them. That's the difference. If you want them, the cost is the roster spot with these players. The upside's still there. No one's probably going to just to sell them Terrace Marshal. So they're probably going to hold. They're probably just going to hold, or you give them something that of little value and they sell. Or this could be a liquidity point for them. The thing about this is it just depends whether you want them or not, depending on your league size, your roster size, your basic league. You're probably not looking into this. A lot of us are in deeper leagues. A lot of us have Devy mixed into our leagues. Some of us has Campus to Canton. Some of us are in 16, 24 teamers, and we're deep. We're deep. We're starting all kinds of guys. Some of us have some weird rules. So you have to think of everybody when I'm talking about this, not just your basic 1 QB, 2 running back, 3 wide receiver league. Those leagues that are basic, you're probably not really going after these guys, but your type of dinos that are a little deeper or a lot deeper that are very intrinsic to the back end of rosters or to ambiguous rosters or to these situations with these offenses that are in transition. You may want to look at this. Look at the stock market on the cheap. Take the dip and see what happens. And when I'm talking dip, I'm talking free. You're not paying up. You're not paying anything. You're not paying anything. That's the thing. When I look at Adam Thielen, I think this is a good bridge wide receiver. I think he's very nuanced. I think he can help this team. Fantasy-wise, we're going to have to see where the volume goes. That's just a thing from week to week. We have to see that. There's a big transition here. DJ Chark, we know what he's about, and that's the air yards. He's about the air yards. And if you need a wide receiver for air yards on this team, it's Terrace Marshal and DJ Chark. Those would be the 2 wide receivers I'd be really going after on this offense. Those would be the 2 guys because I'd be chasing the air yards and I'd be chasing the spike weeks and I would have them on the back end of my roster. And when attrition hits my team, at least I have an air yards guy who might catch that 1 target that game and may pop off for me or something. That's what I'm looking at. And that could materialize the more to one of those receivers. I also could see attrition hitting in this offense due to the nature here. We got an older wide receiver in Thielen. Laviska Shenault is spelled with the word attrition in it. DJ Chark has had his injuries. Terrace Marshal has had his injuries as well. That could allow an opportunity for one of these wide receivers to get a boatload of targets middle of the year or something like that. That thing is, a lot of people are going to say the sky's falling on Terrace Marshal and Laviska Shenault. I'm not saying to go after him because this is a very ambiguous situation. I'm saying don't act like the sky's falling. Take it at value if you want them. If there are prospects that you've been looking at these last few years and you couldn't have been able to get them these last few years, this might be the time for you. And you just stash them and hope for the best and you flip and rip whenever you can. One of those situations. But honestly, we're just going to see what happens here because this is a big transition. We don't even know who they're drafting a quarterback yet. Could be Stroud, could be Young, could be Richardson. Got a lot of rumors going on. Stroud looks like the guy from all the rumors on the internet the last few days, from what we saw from those videos. But we're still going to have to see. We're still going to have to see what happens here. We also got Dalton there, pushes it downfield a bit. We saw that with the Saints. But Dalton is Dalton as well, too. We saw that as well. So we're just going to have to see. Miles Sanders could surprise us. At least going to get some volume. That tells us a lot. This is a situation where you speculate. You speculate on a wide receiver. You hope for the best. And hopefully you have other wide receivers. You're supposed to be building around wide receivers anyways for your dynasty teams. So this is a situation where you got 4 cheap wide receivers. You speculate on one if you want and see what happens. And all 4 of them have reasons why you should speculate. And all 4 of them should be relatively very cheap to get in Dynasty Fantasy Football. And honestly, from what I see from them, you look at them from a week-to-week basis once we get in season, and that's probably where you're going to catch their value. You're probably not going to catch them at value as like the next wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1. You're going to catch them at their value week-to-week basis when attrition hits your team. And you should be building your team around wide receivers, so you shouldn't need to really speculate too hard at wide receiver. That shouldn't be the spot you should be speculating at. I would more want to speculate at the running back position and hope than at the wide receiver position, but some people need to do that, especially in those deeper leagues, and I'm in some of those leagues as well, and I understand how that works. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear about that. Make sure you smash that subscribe button. I'm here to drop the quick news, quick analysis on the markets, help you build your dynasty teams and everything else. I want to thank you for watching. I'll catch you on the next video.